Hello, hello. It is Tuesday where we are reading this book, Psychitecture, about designing the mind. And we're doing this for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. We're saying instead of getting depressed, just redesign your visions and how you see the world. We're on this part of the book that's about biases and fallacies. So basically, the idea is that your brain's an algorithm where it takes inputs and it runs it through its machine and then it outputs certain things. And if you have biases or fallacies, that kind of makes an erroneous algorithm, right? Like the way you filter things is maybe not as good as it could be. I mean, what do you think fa biases and fallacies do for your algorithm?
Yeah, well, I like the way he explains it with input goes to cognition. So you get these inputs and then come to a conclusion, and then the bias makes a distortion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. And I also love like how he's said all these kinds of different kinds of biases and what the distortions that they make and how we as humans just are so susceptible to these biases.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, have you ever read that book called Blind Spot?
No.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's all about the kind of science behind unconscious bias, where you have these biases and you just don't really even know it, and then they have these experiments to prove whether or not like people have these. And it's funny because you typically you just don't think that you have bias, and there's actually a name for that, which is called blind spot bias.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, you think everybody else is racist, but you're not.
Well, yeah,
Or,
that's I was gonna say that makes me think of when the students wanted me to say I was racist because they were just like everyone's racist, admit you're racist, and I'm like, yeah, no thanks on that. But yeah, I understand people wanting me to admit that I have this unconscious bias. Even though I've like consciously looked at it. But yeah, I mean, I get that. Yeah, so okay, so there's unconscious biases. Yeah, okay, so we're on the page where he's talking about consistency bias, which causes us to conform our views of our past actions and attitudes to our present. He's saying memories can be fabricated or even intentionally implanted in other persons. Well, what is it? Consistency bias? I don't even understand that one.
it's like you think of yourself as a consistent person. So things that you have, say, learned in the last 6 months, you feel like past you from a year ago, like knew those things and acted the way that you would act now back then.
Hmm.
But really, you didn't know those things yet, so you probably didn't act that way. But as storytellers and the whole the left side of your brain, I think it is, that tells the stories about things, uh, will tell stories in your mind, in your own mind, about past you that just aren't true.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So then he's saying our view of the future is even more distorted. So I guess there's all these distortions in past and future, and that's probably why the power of now is so strong. It's like what is happening right now is probably more clear than past or future anyway. But he's saying Homo sapiens is a storytelling animal that thinks in stories rather than in numbers or graphs, and believes that the universe itself works like a story, replete with heroes and villains, conflicts and resolutions, climaxes and happy endings. I mean, yeah, like the past is a narrative. Like the past, one thing happens in the past, and then we make a big narrative about the past on top of the past. And so is the what really happened versus the narrative that, it's just I mean, in Enlightenment theory, like we've talked about that, like that the narrative makes us kind of nutty, you know what I mean? Like the constant narrative as opposed to just being, which is, you know. So this is kind of the idea that there can be a bunch of biases in your narrative.
Well, and that they've also proven that like we lie to ourselves all the time and have no idea that we're just making stuff up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you know that the chicken shovel experiment thing?
Mm-mm.
All right, so they were studying the 2 hemispheres of the brain and how these scientists had this group of people who were epileptics, and then they had this certain surgery that severed the connectivity between the two hemispheres of their brain. And so I think like 10 people had the experiment, and then like four people of those or six of them decided that they'd be in in their study. And what they did was like you the left side of one side of your brain processes images, and then the other side processes words or something. And so they were able to tell whether or not you're talking to the left or the right side of your brain by they would show pictures to one side and not the other, and then the other and not the other. And so they showed pictures of like a chicken claw, and then they showed pictures of like a house with snow, and then you had to pick out the things,
Mhm.
and then so one side of the brain picked out like a shovel for the side of the house that had the picture that had the snow, and then but they were holding it in the hand that tells stories, and they said, well, you have a shovel in your hand and you're seeing a picture of a chicken claw and a house. So, like, why did you put those things together? And the person is like, oh, because you need a shovel to shovel out the chicken shed. But it like makes no sense.
Mhm.
Like that's why you would choose the shovel. You actually chose the shovel because you saw a picture of a snowy house,
Weird.
not because you saw a chicken claw. But like the person didn't realize that the storytelling side of their brain is just like makes stuff up and then just really insists on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I was thinking about that because in astrology we have our Mercury and then we have this all the other planets, and so it's like you act. Let's say you have a Mars transit, you just act because you're martial. It's like you're acting because you're full of iron. So you do a certain thing. Maybe you yell at somebody or you do some push-ups, and then when you have a transit to your Mercury, you will make a narrative about why you did that. But it's like, you know, the astrological explanation would be you did that because you were in a Mars transit and your chakras are burning. But then the Mercury will just make a narrative that makes sense to other people to to like weave the web of like why you would do that. I mean, so yeah, when people are like, I don't trust that person, I'm like, I don't trust anyone. People are just like weird narrative makers trying to like make everything make sense. And it's just yeah, I get that. I mean I get you there. It's like, do I trust people's narratives? Like not really. I mean, a narrative is just a way to weave together what's going on, basically, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Well,
what do you think of these
it's
talk shows we're doing where there's just like all it's an hour of just like revolving narrative? It's just it doesn't mean anything.
right.
I mean, one of
Right.
the reasons I like to talk so long is like, I used to get like slandered a lot as a teacher, like you're racist, you're all these things. And it's like what I realized is if you talk for like an hour straight about like all these different things, people just tire out and then they're just like, oh, you're just you. It's like it's almost like by talking so much it erases narrative in some ways.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think the narrative also, or the like, that we make up stories for everything, like in your Mercury example, right? Or your Mars example, rather, like that. So the person will make up a story as to why they did that thing, but you're like it was a Mars transit, so of course they had this energy that they needed to, explode with, right? Or whatever, to be martial. Uh, so that again circles back around to the free will discussion, right?
Right.
So is it that we have this storytelling capability, and because we can tell stories to ourselves of why we did certain things, do we think we're doing them because we have free will, but we aren't?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's the thing is like astrology is narrative therapy in some ways. It's like adding a celestial or hovering over humans' narrative to what's going on, which somehow helps because it like has causality that's outside the self and all these kinds of things. I mean, I think narrative therapy is therapy though. Like most therapy is narrative and changing the story, and that makes people feel better.
Yeah, reframing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's saying we have a tendency to cling to our stories as if they were perfect representations of reality. In pathological extremes, this delusional overrecognition of patterns manifested in disorders like schizophrenia. Um, he says pattern recognition gone haywire. It happens in optical illusions. We stereotype people in a patterning kind of thing. So it's like he's saying we cling to stories, and I think one of the ways to change your algorithm is to change the story you're clinging to. Or like later in the book we see that one of the ways to debias yourself is to learn something new. Because it's like every time we learn something, like one of the things that happens every time we do one of these videos, I learn something new, and then everything in my past gets reframed over with this new information I just learned. So it's like layers of a cake keep getting put on my past of just like now it looks like this, now it looks like this, and it's like the past returns from the future, they say, of like every time you learn something new, all those biases and algorithms that you would make to narrator on your past changes. And I think so I guess the tendency to cling to stories and make patterns of stories, I think, is kind of one of the things we're fighting here in like debiasing things. It's like if you have a story that isn't working or is negative or hurts you, that's an algorithm that you want to change.
Hmm. Yeah, right on.
Okay, well, let's talk about cognitive debiasing. So, if we do have biases, he says you can debias, which would be to like
Yeah.
take out, you know, um, Elon Musk, he quotes as saying, you should take the approach that you're wrong. Your goal is to be less wrong. And I'm just like, you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, I get this is like cleanup crew, right? It's like we're going into the mind to say, where are we wrong?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's part of the spirit of continuous improvement is to recognize that everything can always be improved upon. And like you said, when you learn new things and then you circle back around to the way you thought about things in the past and it changes the way that you think about things in the future, yeah, then yeah, that I guess is his whole point of like designing the mind is like you're designing your own mind and your own experiences because you're changing the ways that you might react to things that occur, right?
Yeah. Yeah, here he brings up bias blind spot. It refers to the tendency to believe what is immune to certain biases. Like, I think that's what you were talking about earlier. It's like, but I think whatever the bias is, there's a million names for biases, like this bias, that bias, this bias, that bias. I think Kaizen came up earlier in this book, which is constant improvement. And so I think we should take, in order for to rewire the mind, first say we're going to debug it. That's what is it in computer programming when you debug things? What is debugging?
Oh yeah, that means you get rid of the flaws.
So in book publishing, that's called getting rid of nits. It's like we go into the book and we fix all the little nits.
Oh yeah.
And so I
Make
feel like we could take our minds and scrub them and be like, what don't I like? What don't I like here? And all of us could do that, right? Like, I don't have a big racial bias because I see things as composite charts first. Like, I would be more inclined to be astrologically biased to say I'm biased to thinking that if I have a good composite chart with somebody, I will like them no matter of their culture, right? Like, so I do have biases, right? But I think, like I do have things I want to scrub out, like the lateness algorithm, like when I just freak out when people are late. That's, I mean, I guess So that's one of my knits. And like you had a knit, I can't remember what it was last time you talked about a knit that you had
Oh
about.
yeah, my anti-sarcasm bias.
Yeah, totally, totally. So maybe for viewers, like what they could do is make a list of biases or knits that you want to work out of your mind frame. Like what don't you like about your mind, you know?
Yeah, I think what he's suggesting is that if you're conscious of these biases or potential biases, is like read the list of them. Or there's these guys made this really cool circle diagram of like that has it's in really small font and it has like every single bias listed on it in this like kind of wheel that they put together. And because one way to counter unconscious bias is to become conscious of potential biases.
Hmm.
And then I think it's like in the self-reflection of thinking about these ones and which ones might be affecting your cognition from being like a correct input to cognition, straight line, and not a like it takes a turn and comes up with an incorrect cognition
Hmm.
is kind of go through the list.
Hmm. Interesting. So he says the question you may be wondering now is how can we program our faulty cognitive algorithms? And I think that is a good question. If we have a bias that plagues us, like what can we do about it? I mean, that's a really good question. And he says, like you're saying, familiarize yourself with the most common biases. Um, you know, and then like he says, memorize them until you can recite them in your sleep. And then he said, but do not assume that the awareness for the bias makes you immune to it. So I think in knits, well, the first thing we do is uncover the knit. We're like, oh, there's a weird situation going on in this sentence. Now we have to figure out what we're going to do about it. Like, do we need to change this S here? Do we need to take out a word? Like, what would fix that knit? You know what I mean? But I think he's saying the first thing we got to do is really become aware of it, look at it really closely, perseverate on it a little bit and be like, God, lateness bias, lateness bias, lateness bias. Like, oh my God, I got a lateness, just trip on your bias so that you remember it's a bias and then get to work at like getting rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way that you and I have been talking about like our, knits or whatevers, uh, that that really throw us. So when somebody's late, that really throws you. When somebody says something that is incorrect, that like throws me
Mm.
or a sentence that I don't understand. It like sometimes it's because they're being intentionally vague. Sometimes it's because they're saying the opposite of what's true, but they're saying it for like effect.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I guess what he's saying is come up with ahead of time, come up with ways that you can deal with that or counter that so that you don't just act on autopilot. And
Hmm.
that's, I think, what we've been doing when we're trying to kind of reframe our reactions and workshop other better potential reactions.
Yeah. I do want to address the racism thing to say I don't want to seem like to have hubris about racism, but when I worked at the Portland School of Astrology for 7 years, my co-teacher was obsessed with racism. She had written a thesis on racism in pagan communities. So I think I worked out a lot of my knits when I was there for 7 years. It's like I just feel like I worked out that knit. I'm not saying I'm immune to racism, but like I really looked very closely at my bias there and
Mhm.
definitely rewired any algorithms I had. So I think we should all look at our racism bias and, transgender bias and, you know, body positivity bias, we'll be, and we're going to be having a show starting in July or June or July on astral bodies because, we're going to look at like the body bias of like that all one certain body type is the only correct body type. And I think one of the activisms that we do at the Moira Press is like challenge biases. The bias that deaf people can't be astrologers, or the bias that like anything. Like I like to attack biases. So this is kind of a cool chapter to remind us of the activist work we're doing, is looking at nits and trying to rewire them, you know.
Mhm.
Okay, so he says, once you're aware of a bias or a bias triggering situation, your next goal will be to design a better alternative algorithm. So, would you say this is just designing a new way of thinking about that concept?
Well, I like the example that he gives is pretty clear of, so you have a bias towards like underestimating the amount of effort something would take you. And you get a project and you're like, I'll be done that in a week. But like, the past evidence is that you won't be done this at in a week because it's a thing that will take 3 weeks. And also that like you always underestimate how long something's going to take you.
He calls it
So,
the planning fallacy.
hmm, right. And so the way that you kind of reprogram that algorithm is you to get the input and then you get what you would think and then you multiply it by 3 and then that's your new output. So it's like you're changing your algorithm from give the estimate that I would give to pause, multiply my estimate by 3, and then give that estimate. And also consider how long it takes other people and like just, but I think it's a lot like stop, slow down, be mindful, think things through more, and then continue on is a general way to reprogram your algorithms. What do you think?
Yeah, like I like it, like where it's just like just once you have some new information, a new idea, you make that part of the pattern. Like anytime someone's late, I now say, "Oh, this is reminding me that God is enough." This is what was my new idea to like revise my algorithm. So for 5 minutes, I just sit there thinking, "Oh, God is enough for me. I don't need this other person. God is enough," and then I sign off at 5 minutes, and that's like my new pattern I do. So as opposed to sitting there like revamping my queue of like who maybe this person shouldn't work with the Moira Press and all this kind of stuff. I also rewired my algorithm because I started sending emails out for YouTube shows, and I said in the email, a reminder that we start exactly on time, so be there a few minutes early. So I actually rewired the algorithm of how I talk to people about scheduling, which will then also change like so I feel like it's like rewiring the pattern of how you do things to make the situation better.
Ah, nice. That's a good example. And I can talk about mine like that. So I have this pattern of when somebody says something just like sarcastic and opposite of what they mean, I would my algorithm is to first be really confused and then secondly be completely annoyed. And so I'm trying to rewire that algorithm to stop and pause and not so much be confused, but to realize that they might be doing it for like comic effect. And then so I pause and then I judge the reactions of other people around me to understand if they were making a joke
Yeah.
or they weren't making a joke.
Or if their joke was helpful.
Yeah, and then I can mimic the behavior of the other people who like laugh that it's a joke. I realize like, oh wait, it's a joke. They're not being annoying. And then I can laugh with the people.
Interesting. I like that. I like
Yeah,
that.
that's my new algorithm.
Yeah. I was trying to rewire your algorithm about me by wearing this weird outfit today, because I never wear gold with blue. But one of the things I do is like wear kooky outfits, but I try to hit the right note with them. But it's like it kind of whatever outfit you wear creates a certain algorithm in the people talking to you about who you are. And like, those stereotype biases, you can actually mess with the algorithms of others. It's like if they come at you, if you look really goth and they come at you with this like goths are really morbid algorithm, you can change it up and wear something really feminine or really circusy or so I do think by being aware of this, we can become aware of the algorithms people are coming at us with, the stereotypes they're coming at us with, and like alter their algorithms with certain nuances.
Oh yeah, because you've shown them an example that doesn't fit their stereotype.
Totally,
Hmm, interesting.
totally. Okay, so yeah, and I was actually thinking about like changing the algorithm of my students. Like I have an algorithm. I'm teaching this class in person on Monday nights, and I have this algorithm of like maybe I overtalk, maybe I undertalk. Like I always have the like my students are critiquing me algorithm going on in my mind of like I systematically like evaluate the critiques I could be getting. And then I realized, oh, I'm going to revise my algorithm by talking differently to students. So I said to them at the end of class, hey, you guys, if I ever do something you don't like in class, please just say something right then and there. Just tell me you're over talking me, you're under talking me, you're doing this. And then they all just looked at me and they're like, oh no, okay, okay. But like I basically got rid of that algorithm I was doing by rewiring my interactions with them. Like, I don't know, I feel like I want to take this further than just rewiring our own algorithms, but like rewiring the algorithms of others and like rewiring like algorithms that are patterns between two people. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you and I have to show up on time and then one of us starts flexing on that, that's going to change the algorithm on that. Like, I feel like what we do changes the pattern with when we have like a dual algorithm going on, or a built algorithm between two people or something like that. Like those shift and quake a little bit at times, and it's just interesting. I guess I'm thinking of algorithms as patterns. Um,
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think this is goes beyond like designing the mind because it's like designing the environment in which you're you are, right?
mhm.
And that brings back to the whole like we are all one consciousness because we are just so entangled.
Yeah. You can evoke algorithms and people like if I had a t-shirt on that said a certain thing, like if I had a t-shirt on that said fat, F-A-T, like the whole time we were talking, people would be looking at that and going to their like fat's bad algorithm, or if they're a fat activist, they'd be like fat's good algorithm, or like, it's like that would evoke a lot of algorithms because I can't remember, there's a word for this when there's I can't remember the word is that some words evoke pictures that are like very systematized and people so like if you use that word at all it connotes like for example the word black. Okay, like I could be talking about a black background here, but if I just said black, like you are probably conjuring images of like black power, black liberation, black people, but like I just said the word black. But
Hmm.
there's this word for words that have all this meaning attached to them, so that when you use the word even innocuously, like people attach all these algorithms to that word. And
Hmm.
so it's like how we create a narrative evokes or doesn't evoke algorithms.
Hmm. Right, it like triggers an algorithm
Yeah,
to
totally.
make you think of, yeah, to bring up pictures in your thoughts and brain.
Yeah, I
That's
can be like,
interesting.
I meant this black background, but that's
Hmm.
not what you evoked when I said black. I mean,
Hmm.
I just know the people listening are evoking all these like images of more um charged images that deal with the word black. You know what I mean? Like Black Lives Matter or Black Liberation, which is not good or bad. I'm not saying either one. I'm just saying there's this thing that occurs with people's algorithms around certain words, but that's what memeing works is like Black Lives Matter made that a meme, which it evokes all these images in people when you hear those three words together. So like algorithms are used in memeing. It's
Yeah,
like you're trying to create an algorithm with a meme, basically.
yeah.
Like if I'm like bead bonanza, like I want you to then trigger you into seeing beads everywhere, you know? So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
is this off topic? Sorry.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe doesn't matter.
So this is really interesting. You said if we want to get rid of a bias, we can
Hmm.
design a counter algorithm,
Hmm.
which we call a cognitive revision.
Hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
good concept because a lot of the memes we make up are cognitive revisions.
Oh, yeah, they're intentional. Well, okay, so a meme is a virus that's an intentional cognitive revision to the world around you because you're trying to affect a change in other humans by changing their, by revising their cognitive algorithm.
Like if I wore a t-shirt that said PHAT,
Hmm.
see how that's a cognitive revision from FAT?
Hmm.
It's like reclaiming the word and being like, no, that's fat. Like that's cool. Like fat is cool. Like it's like that is a cognitive, like PHAT is a cognitive revision. Or like queer people reclaiming the word queer is a
Hmm.
cognitive revision.
Right on.
Because they designed a counter algorithm to that word. Like they kept getting called queer, so then which meant bad or weird. And so they were like, here, I'll show you a different picture of queer. Here's a bunch of rainbows and like beautiful people and like all this stuff. And so now all the algorithms we have, the cognitive revision has turned that word into conjuring all these other beautiful things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true that like reclaiming a word or intentionally changing its meaning is a cognitive revision. It's an intentional one.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah. And I like, what was that sticker I gave you? The gender euphoria sticker?
Oh yeah. Yeah, look. I put it on my day timer.
See how that's a cognitive revision
Yeah.
from gender dysphoria?
Yeah.
So I feel like just integrating this into what we already know, like a bias can be a negative meme. It's like a virus that's negative.
Well, I think it's negative in its effect if the intention is clear thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, like the algorithm, like if you look at your belly and you're like, I'm so big, I'm not healthy. There's all these like algorithms around like body weight because of, BMI and like all this stuff and the food pyramid and blah 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 blah. That's what like culture has built a certain algorithm around body type, right? So like if we take astro bodies and we say, oh, you look just like your chart, that's like a cognitive revision. Like your chart has a belly and your chart, there's charts of all different sizes and shapes. That's a cognitive revision.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because it takes the like the input of seeing someone whose body is not the stereotypical normal one, and which you have this bias that might make you think their body type, the way that they are living is incorrect, right? And instead, what you're talking about, Andy, is changing that so that when you see a person with a body that is not stereotypically quote unquote normal, then the cognition that you have is they are presenting in the correct body for them.
This is so cool, this episode, because what I'm realizing is that cognitive revisions are activist work. Like that's because a lot of activism happens in doing cognitive revisions for culture. It's like stop associating a belly with, you know, ill health and, you know, like the word obesity is like the medicalization of a big body, right? Like for example, but like fat activists will do a cognitive revision and be like, they have like memes like they have the no lose movement, which is saying don't lose your weight, just enjoy, just love your body, right? Like, so it's like the no lose is fighting the obesity concept, right? Like, and it's like, of course, not everyone's going to agree with that. Like, no lose is controversial, right? Because a lot of people would be like, no, that's unhealthy, and then there's all these videos of fat activists dying and all this kind of stuff, right? And it's like, yeah, I mean, activism is controversial. There's a reason that we've created certain algorithms, maybe based on research, or, you know, it's like, or just what anti-capitalists would say is just like white colonization of male, white fit males, or like, I don't see how activists like are fighting algorithms with cognitive revisions, and then there's like a backlash to that cognitive religion revision, or like, you know, it's like not everyone's gonna love your cognitive revision, you know, but it's like that's okay.
Right, and not every cognitive revision is um objectively, science-based or correct for everybody or something like that. Like, whose truth wins out, right? I mean, one person might have an idea like, no, this is a bad cognition coming from a certain input. Like, this is the incorrect cognition output. But somebody else will think, no, this one's the correct one, right? And everybody has can use critical thinking to prove what they want to prove.
Yeah,
It's the same. I think he says this, maybe this is almost the page that we're at, and when he says that the tools of rationality are identical to the tools of rationalization.
interesting. Well, it's interesting because like we have to work on the nits that keep are killing our spirits, right? It's like the thin body archetype is killing my spirit because I enjoy eating snacks and I love I love the life of eating what I like, what I want, but it does give me a little belly. So it's like I am my spirit's dying from the algorithm of like skinny is the only way. Like, so I need a cognitive revision there, right? I just, so my spirit's not dying, right? But like, maybe another person is eating so much at the point where their heart is failing. They need a cognitive revision to somehow change that. I mean, like there's no one way for there's no one way cognitive revision. It depends on what's killing your spirit. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's what I do think, like, we each have to design our own mind to be optimal for the our own values and our so that we can think clearly and organize our desires in the direction of our values and then manifest that in our brain and in our world
Interesting.
and our experiences.
Yeah, like I was telling Shane about how you don't like sarcastic jokes, you know, in computer programming because, you know, he is too. And he's like, oh, he would hate me because, like, I'm that guy, you know, and he's like one of the best team leads at his huge company that he works at, which is at the top of computing. And it's like, so he likes that algorithm, like the sarcastic joke algorithm, you know, and your chart doesn't like that, right? And it's like, so it's like, who should be revised? I mean, I think one of the things with the Saturn Neptune conjunction is like people die at the hand of reality, which is like their dreams die at the hand of reality, which is we will never all see things the same way. And like, you know, but we're saying like revise your own vision of what, you know, it's like every time there's a transit to Neptune, I feel like we need to refine our vision for our manifestation, right? It's like, I happen to be studying fat activism right now because I am getting a little belly in my old age. But that doesn't mean that you should be into that because like you don't have a belly in your old age and you probably and you're more on the science side, your chart is, and it's like you got all those planets in Virgo, and so it's like you're gonna be more medically about it and I'm gonna be more Pisces moon about it, which is just like live and let live and be free. But see, astrology acknowledges that both of those are true in God's creation, is that you and I both exist under creation.
Hmm.
They're both true. I like this. Only do a cognitive revision if something's not working for you. But, cognitive revisions are activist work, is what I'm taking from this, and that this is super cool what you're presenting to the school here because it's like I see why you did this. It was like, oh, if we have something plaguing us, let's revise that script and go forward, you know.
Hmm.
So he says, though lots of research has been done on cognitive biases, the process of removing them is fairly new territory. Numerous studies have confirmed the efficacy of debiasing methods, but no single process has been shown to be universally effective. I think you and I really are fans of memeing.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think, yeah, and I think it's like design your own meme, infect your own brain in the way that you want to change it.
I love that. Design your own meme. Like, yeah, like meme your life. Like, I feel like, yeah, like with Fern saying abundance is a human right, that was doing a cognitive reprogram on people thinking abundance is greedy or, like people thinking if you want a $2 million house, you're greedy. She was doing a cognitive revision there and saying like we all can have that at the same time, but like so I'm really want us to take from this lesson that memes or in the way that we're using them and the manifestation that we're doing, all that scripting is cognitive reprogramming or whatever. We got to remember this term, cognitive revision, cognitive revision.
Yeah, cognitive revision. Right on.
Okay, so he's talking about a Bayesian revision, which I didn't totally understand.
Oh, Bayesian.
Bayesian.
Bayesian revision is like you have to take into account how common things are as well as your first inclination. Like I think he also gives a good example of this here, right? So say somebody's shy and introverted. Do you think it's more likely they would be A, a librarian, or B, a salesperson? And
Um,
everybody's what would you answer?
well, a librarian.
Yeah. And then what if I told you, okay, there are, you know, 2,000 salespeople to every one librarian, or 20,000 salespeople to every one librarian. You only have one librarian in your town and you have 20,000 salespeople. Now, how likely is it that just because they're shy and introverted, they're the one librarian in your entire town?
Yeah, I see. So is that adding, it's like you learn something new, a new fact, and that is a cognitive revision.
Yeah, you make a Bayesian revision, updating your hypothesis or belief based on new information that you got.
Interesting. Wow.
So that's the whole thing of like consider the opposite, right? Like yeah, I think that's also what he's saying for ways that you can revise your initial uh cognition is like like I was saying before is like you stop and then you think like, well, is that all the information? Is there other information? Is there something that should I reconsider my first, uh my first immediate knee-jerk like conclusion?
I think we should start next time with consider the opposite and try that on a few things.
Hmm, right on.
I like that. But so I love this episode. So it's on, I'm going to title it Cognitive Revision and Debiasing.
Nice. Debugging bias.
Yeah, totally. Oh my God. Well, thank you for a great talk. I learned a lot today.
Oh, me too. I'm really enjoying this book a lot. I think
Me
it's really
too.
cool.
It's really helping us to understand why like memetics and manifesting is so awesome too. It's kind of the more
Yeah.
sciencey approach. Look, we already got through that much. I know it doesn't feel like we're moving that fast, but we got through something.
Oh, right on. Cool. All right, up to 51 or 50.
All right, I'll see you later tonight.
All right. Thanks.
All right, see you later. Bye.